Welcome back to the Black Blockchain Summit. We're glad to have our brother Arthur Hayes for the third time, and also co-founder and co-host of the Black Blockchain Summit, Mr. Sinclair Skinner. And we're basically going to pick up where we left off in terms of a part three of the discussions we've been having with Arthur in terms of macro and geopolitical analysis of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets. So I'll let Arthur introduce himself briefly and let us know what he's been doing and his general thoughts on the macro and geopolitical space in terms of Bitcoin.
Yeah, so thank you for having me for the third time. Really excited to do this. I'm based out here in Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong. I kind of float around. Former CEO of BitMEX, leading a derivatives exchange for crypto, and one of the co-founders as well. Right now, I spend most of my time with my family office, Maelstrom. We are a token fund, so we invest my money in early stage token projects. We invest usually in the seed round, and we do a lot of advisory deals as well. And so we have a small investment team, and that's what we do. It's a lot of fun. I love the crypto space. I think it's really growing at the end of the day. Really smart people are coming into this ecosystem, and we're launching some really, really cool projects, hopefully trying to disintermediate a lot of the corrupt TradFi institutions that plague this planet.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of buzz around some of the stuff you're doing with stablecoins, so I'm sure we'll get to that. Sinclair, you can introduce yourself as well.
All right, yes, and welcome and thank you so much, John, and incredible, amazing, dynamic brother Hayes. Sinclair Skinner, co-founder of Bill Mari. We started off doing remittances from Zimbabwe. We were the first Bitcoin startup to explicitly receive a remittance license from a reserve bank to use Bitcoin to remit cash. Of course, as you know, we've been doing this wonderful Black Blockchain Summit to really bring this community of incredible, people in the crypto space to a greater, larger, the Black communities. And we're not monolithic, but I started college at Tuskegee as an engineer in 1987, and my family. My dad was a computer science, so I will be candid. I had an Apple IIe in 1983. So when it first came out, we were early into computers, but most of the folks in my neighborhood and community didn't have access to the internet, didn't understand what the internet was until much later. So much of what we've done is try to make sure that our communities get access to this information, be able to participate, become makers, builders in this space, or if they don't want it, they can at least know what they're talking about when they say they don't want it. So much of this is about sharing and empowering our communities so they can utilize this incredible, powerful tool. Thank you.
Awesome. And I should say that Sinclair has been a mentor of mine since we met in 2014 in Amsterdam at the Bitcoin Foundation conference. It's been 10 years, so this is our 10-year anniversary. Myself, John Wainaina Karanja, I run Melanin, which is a startup in the distributed energy space. We are building on top of proof of work mining with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin auxiliary protocols. So I think we're all Bitcoiners on this call. And I'd like to pick up where we left off last time, basically in terms of what's been happening in terms of war, in terms of developments in Ukraine and in the Middle East, and where perhaps Arthur sees the general space going in terms of the global economy. We have an election coming up, in a few months in the US. So how does all this fit in the direction you're going, Arthur?
So I think at a very high level, we're at the precipice of change. Change can be good or bad, but change is volatile. And the express goal of most leaders around the world, regardless of what type of government you in theory run, are against change. They have a certain way of doing things that's been enshrined since, World War II, and that's coming apart. And the people who are at the top don't really want to lose their privileged position, and they're resorting to printing money in an attempt to buy votes and buy support from the electorate or just the people around the world. And that's sort of what we're seeing. Pick your country, you're seeing the wrong type of people surging in sort of popularity. And those that are in power are trying to use their ability to print money and to enact regulations to prevent that change. And so crypto is essentially pro volatility. If you look at a chart of Bitcoin, the more volatile it is, the more it goes up. And so we're the complete opposite of fiat currencies, which love stability, which is essentially unnatural because the universe tends towards chaos in the infinite. Bitcoin benefits from this chaos, benefits from the change. Again, we don't know what the change is going to be, but it's going to be different. And so I think this cycle is a bit different than some of the others because now we're at this point and we're seeing this with, wars around the world where you have two essential sides facing off, China, Russia on one side, US and the Western Europe on the other side, and they're picking their battles in different parts around the world. And so we're seeing this bifurcation of the world, whether it's from where you can go with your passport, where your money can be sent, what type of business that you can do. And we have this crypto thing, which is global, which anyone can use. And I think it's going to benefit greatly from essentially the change that's going to happen around the world. So yeah, I know people are a bit sad that the price of Bitcoin's been pretty much range bound since April of last year, but the things that have brought Bitcoin to where it is, aggressive money printing, a chaotic world or more chaotic world, those are continuing. So I believe Bitcoin's going to go up in price over time. But yes, it's been a bit rough for the past, 3-4 months.
Hey, John, can I just chime in? Because, y'all talking about these wars. Our theme this year, again, is peaceful solutions to violent world problems. And when we think about it, and that actually was Cameron Winklevoss, he was talking about how Bitcoin doesn't require coercion for people to use it. Like it literally, we use Bitcoin because we think it's better. We think it's amazing. We're inspired, not, beat down in the head to actually use it. So I thought that was an interesting connection to the issue of violence. Oftentimes when they talk about our communities, they talk about violence and as if we come out of that space when really we probably don't. We've probably been subjected to more violence. When you look at that, I say the word violence out loud to you. We talk about wars out loud, even the use of money as a weapon. How do you see crypto just pose? And I'm a Bitcoin person. I'm gonna say Bitcoin out loud because I'm not that person, with the other, and I'm not against it. I'm open for everybody to do everything. So please don't. But how do you see, Bitcoin as a response to that or as a just pose to that, just position to the violence we see? How do we see, fiat kind of feed? I'm putting words in your mouth. Let me just be quiet. There you go. But I think you understand.
Well, at the end of the day, Bitcoin allows anyone to transact with anyone. And so what we're really seeing right now is different blocks are trying to wall off their population and say, okay, we're broke. We don't want your money going over there. We need it staying here. And so we're going to make it difficult for you to express yourself if you want to leave our system, regardless of what that system is. And Bitcoin travels anywhere there is the internet. And I think the government really likes the internet because they get to monitor everybody, whether you're in the US or China, whichever camp you're in, there's surveillance. So the internet's not going anywhere. And now we have a currency that travels over the internet. So if you have an internet connection, you now can be connected to humans that otherwise your government wouldn't allow you to trade with, wouldn't allow you to speak to, wouldn't allow you to, form a community with. And so that's what I think the power of Bitcoin is and why certain individuals are very threatened that there exists this way for their citizens to reach out across borders and commune with other humans.
Right on, right on. All right, John, what you got, man? That was good.
Well, yeah. I've been following your sort of recent articles and you gave a range of sort of the price appreciation of Bitcoin being between $100,000 and $1,000,000. It's easy to see the $100,000, given, the recent news with ETFs, this past year. So what is the catalyst or the trigger that would drive the price of Bitcoin, closer to $1,000,000? And would you be able to have a timeline around that? Or there's just too much happening to be able to sort of determine that outcome?
So at the end of the day, the price of Bitcoin, the number of Bitcoins is fixed. However, the amount of fiat currency will go to infinity. And if you think about all the major economic blocks, they're all printing money and they need to print even more money to keep the system in place that it is right now. So if you think about COVID in the United States between 2020 and 2022, the US government printed 40% of all dollars in existence. So that tells you this pace and rapid change at which things will happen if there is a serious global conflict, pandemic, like there was during COVID. So these are the types of situations where the authorities don't respond with, hey, let's tighten our belts and save money. It's, I need to print more money to make sure that my voters don't vote me out of office. And so if you think that this US election is very contentious, if you think that the elections in Europe are very contentious, if you think that there is some issues in the Chinese economy with growth or in Japan, the response is going to be printed money. If you believe that the US-led world order will shift to one where there's multiple different countries who are leading the world, again, how is the US going to respond? Let's print as much money as possible to make sure that through this change, I stay in power. So I think that we're going to see an acceleration of the quantity of money emitted from major governments, and that's what drives us from 100,000 to $1 million. I mean, mentally, I think that's in the 2026, 2027. But again, I don't use leverage when I'm longing Bitcoin. So I don't care. I just know humans. And I've looked at history, and every civilization always responds in the same way to any sort of challenge to their authority. Let me print money. And so I have 100% confidence that the humans in charge of all these different governments will do the same thing that the Romans did, thousands of years ago, print money. And so Bitcoin will go up in price because the amount of fiat currency expands. Will it happen in 2 years? I hope so. But again, if it doesn't, then it doesn't. And it takes as long as it's going to take.
Yeah. I happened to be at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville this year, and both President Trump and Robert Kennedy, sort of said that they would like to have Bitcoin as strategic reserve asset with the U.S. Treasury. Is what you just said informing that sort of narrative, or are they just trying to get votes, or were they trying to get votes at the time?
I wrote an essay about this. I believe that they're just trying to get votes. If you think about Trump, right? Trump was elected from 2016 to 2020. How many pro-Bitcoin policies did he enact as a president? Zero, right? How many has Biden and Kamala Harris enacted? Zero. So they're the same. We have experience. They can say whatever they want to say at a fundraising dinner. I think there's some articles that crypto bros have donated the most of any sort of like corporate block, right? Okay, what are you going to say if the money says, I want crypto? Here's some crypto. The president of the United States can't unilaterally say the Treasury now needs to include Bitcoin as a reserve asset. There's a lot of other people in the government who probably aren't really for that, who need to come on board with that idea. So I think it sounds really great. Makes Bitcoin people very excited. But if you look at the record of any of these politicians, there is no positive developments in sort of Bitcoin regulation or Bitcoin adoption. I also don't think you actually need it. Bitcoin's gone from nothing to, 1.2 or $1.5 trillion asset, and there has been no regulatory clarity, no regulatory support. So why do we think we need it to progress? It works. We don't need the government to tell us that it's okay. We're just going to do it because it makes sense for us as a financial product.
Yeah, it really, again, I'm not here to impose my political views, because Kamala did go to Howard University and I'm a Kappa and she was a Kappa sweetheart, and there's some actual relationships, so I know the sister. But when I heard folks believe in what politicians say while they campaign, it was just blew my mind. Like literally, the politicians you love or hate, they all lie. I mean, I'm not saying it like it's probably the only profession where you can actually use euphemisms like spin, which really means you were lying. So for them to take a position so strong in support of Trump, who's consistently not told his truth, just like other politicians. I'm not making him better or worse in that regard, but literally who has a record that you could actually say, did he actually enact policies when he was in office? And they seem to lose their mind and then started to really drive this, I don't know if it's a statism thing, but one of the things that got us involved was that, I'm not saying I'm an anarchist, but I believe in the sovereignty of the individual. Like at the end of the day, I'm me, and that freedom and to be able to be a part of that and share who I think I am, Bitcoin, like you said, actually allows me to do that more. And the way they even talk about the immigrants, all this stuff is about borders and dividing. I was like, this doesn't sound like the Bitcoin I was drawn to. It doesn't sound like, even when he was talking about reserves, I don't think we ever was like, what is the government going to do? Like that, to go into this was to actually say, I'm no longer going to depend on the government. I'm going to depend on my best abilities. And if we can work this out, we will, with tools and technology, not waiting every 4 years and praying to somebody that someone shows up to save us. To save us. We ain't never been saved, bro. We ain't got our reparations, no 48. Like, I'm not waiting. So I think it was really odd that they went so hard into a political, and I do other business. Most people in business butter the bread on both sides. Like, I don't care what they say in public. They literally are handing money to both candidates and say, look, hey, may the best person win. And they go, and when you see, there's never a logjam in Congress for the banks. They can tell you, oh, well, we having all this problem, but every time a bank needs something done, I'm telling you, they figure it out. So again, I think it seemed premature for folks to jump out on Trump's thing. I'm not going to say anything derogatory, but they just got all on his thing. And it was just like, wow. Anyway, I apologize.
Yeah, yeah. It was all very interesting to see how enthused the conference attendees were, given the historical background of what Bitcoin has begun with in terms of having freedom money. I wonder what the impact of the Bitcoin ETFs have been and will be going forward into the future, given that we've seen companies like BlackRock accumulate huge sums of Bitcoin. Are they going to do what they did to the gold and silver market to Bitcoin? Is that actually possible?
Well, I think first of all, BlackRock is a passive investor. BlackRock does nothing. And so if you think about what Bitcoin is where it is because people did something. People, spoke about it, they used it, they mined it. They had to proactively do something. And so if you're sitting on a bunch of Bitcoin and your investment mandate is to do nothing, and that's what they're supposed to do as a manager, then you're actually at a very, very large scale, not right now, they're detrimental to the success of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not like gold. If I have gold and it sits in the ground, it's still gold. If no one used Bitcoin again, the network fails and Bitcoin goes to zero. So while it is like gold, it's completely different from a fundamental standpoint. I think a lot of people don't understand that nuance. And so, yes, if BlackRock accumulated 100% of all Bitcoin would go to zero because no one used it. And so that is the detriment of a passive investor in this space. Again, I'm not saying that we should ban BlackRock from owning Bitcoin. The whole point is, does this economic game work with all types of people and all types of institutions with different motives? And so if we can't, as a community, overcome a massive passive investor owning 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever percent of the supply, then we have the wrong consensus mechanism and we need to change. So I'm not saying BlackRock shouldn't own Bitcoin, but in a very long term, if it continues like this, it could be a problem. So what are we going to do about it?
So does that mean I'm sorry, John.
No, go ahead, Sinclair.
Well, you were talking about your investments with tokens. So are you looking or are you involved in any like layer 2 solutions that may, like, we talk about Lightning and trying to speed up the transactions. What is your, view and horizon on those type of applications?
So the first thing that I feel very strongly about is supporting core developers. So at BitMEX, we gave grants for core developers on the Bitcoin protocol. At Maelstrom, we've given away 2 grants already for core developers on the Bitcoin protocol. So the first thing is, regardless of what you think the protocol should be, let's support the individuals who are putting their time and effort into making it secure, making it the hardest money ever known, making sure that we can sort of get out in front of some of these problems that we see happening on the network. So that's the first thing that we're doing. And the second is, we're supporting some protocols like Mezzo. I wouldn't say it's a fully on-chain solution yet, but they're moving there. How do we bring, decentralized finance, DeFi, to the Bitcoin ecosystem? There's varying different opinions on how to do that, but I think one or more of these projects will figure that out, and this will become a narrative that gets a lot more traction coming into next year once we start seeing some of these protocols roll out applications and seeing if people actually use them.
Right on.
Yeah, I think this is a good point to segue into stable coins. I know Maelstrom has invested in Athena.
Yes.
And
so we didn't invest, we're an advisor.
You're an advisor, okay. And you also wrote sort of a thesis around backing stablecoins with Bitcoin, and then now eventually with Ethereum for Athena. So, could you just give us a synopsis on how that will actually work, and why you think that's the way to go?
So I won't get into the math, but essentially there is this derivative product that we invented at BitMEX called a perpetual swap. And if I combine a short position in that swap with long Bitcoin, I've created a position which, regardless of which way the price of Bitcoin goes in US dollars, can never be liquidated mathematically. So what I've created is a synthetic dollar. So if I'm shorting this perpetual swap as a market maker, I'm essentially providing synthetic dollars to the crypto ecosystem, and I should get paid for that because dollars are in short supply usually in the crypto ecosystem because Bitcoin just goes up in price on a longer term basis. So I get paid a rate of interest. That's called the funding rate on this trade. And so if I combine these two things together, I've created a synthetic dollar that has no ties to the banking system, but is pegged at $1, regardless of the price in Bitcoin. And I earn a rate of interest. And this interest can be passed on to the holders of the stablecoin. And so that's what Athena does. They hold long Bitcoin, short swap, long Ethereum, short swap, all essentially a synthetic dollar, and they earn a rate of interest. Now, that rate of interest is variable. It changes. I think right now, I looked on the screen, it's about 4% right now. It's gone as high as 80% per annum. There's different factors that influence that. And so the point about Athena is that we as a crypto ecosystem depend heavily on Tether. And not knocking Tether, the guys have done a very, very good job over time of creating a form of US dollar money that moves over public blockchains and have the tune of, I don't know, 100 to $150 billion of circulating supply. It's used all across at least Asia where I am. It's used on a lot of the exchanges as their dollar instead of having a bank account. So it's extremely useful. But the problem is it relies 100% on the good graces of the US banking system to allow them to put their dollars in the bank, to allow them to buy US treasuries. And so obviously Tether's had a contentious relationship with the US financial authorities. They've gotten sued many times. I think they have all the money, by the way. So I'm not a Tether FUD person. But at the end of the day, the US banking system is hostile to Tether. I wrote an essay a few months ago, and I pointed out that Tether, on a per employee basis, is the most profitable financial institution in the world, more profitable than Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citibank, all these big banks, because they have about 100 people and they make about $5 billion in free cash flow every year, doing what a bank should do, which is take deposits and do transaction services, which a lot of banks don't really do anymore. So that's why Tether has a place in this world. But again, we're crypto. Why do we have one of the largest assets in our ecosystem completely dependent on the good graces of the US banking system? So that's why I wrote these essays saying somebody should launch this product where instead of it depending on the US banking system, let's depend on the Bitcoin exchanges that have a vested interest in making sure that the contracts work as they're written and that their customers keep their collateral so they're not stealing people's money. And so that's what Athena does. It has derivative positions on all the large sexes, and it holds Bitcoin that it gets as subscriptions to create its circulating supply. And so the currency has gone from zero to I think about $2.5 or $3 billion in circulation in about 6 months. Some of the fastest growing protocols ever. And hats off to the team at Athena for all the hard work that they're doing. So that's why we back this, because we want to back ourselves. And let's not depend on others to allow us to have financial freedom. And that's why I believe in Athena and other protocols like it.
All right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I came across an article a few days ago saying that I don't know how true it was, that the Chinese Reserve Bank is trying to create a token, backing that token with the 4 trillion US reserves. I don't know if you've come across
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. So is that something that would make sense, that is similar to what you're trying to do with Athena? Why would it work? Why wouldn't it work?
So the whole de-dollarization thing, I think people sort of get a bit emotional about it, especially Americans. Oh, the dollar is aggressive. Oh, no one's going to beat the dollar. China doesn't have a real currency, blah, blah, blah. No one's ever going to use yuan. And I think they missed the point that I don't think that the dollar is going to stop getting used. I don't think that a lot of trading partners, especially China, are going to stop invoicing things in dollars. What will stop and what has stopped is if I have a balance, trade balance with another country that's not the United States, instead of keeping that trade balance in dollars, I'm going to keep that trade balance in gold. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of the BRICS countries and China, Russia, and all these places, they're net buyers of gold because they said, okay, let's not settle our differences in trade between ourselves in dollars, which can get confiscated by the US Treasury unilaterally. Let's settle these in gold. We're not going to stop using the dollar. The dollar won't stop being one of the largest currency, or if not the largest circulating currency in the world. But I'm not going to save in dollars. I'll save in gold. And that's why you see the gold price is 2,500, even though, the Fed has raised rates from 0 to 5.5% over the last year and a half. So I think people get it wrong. I don't think China wants to have a currency backing its treasury supply. It'll just let the treasuries mature. It'll take the dollars and it'll buy gold. It'll buy commodities. It'll buy the things that it needs. They don't need to just go and dump treasuries because that would hurt them. Then the price of the treasuries would go down. So it's a slow moving process. I don't think China's dumping the dollar anytime soon. I don't think China wants to be the global reserve currency issuer. Look around America, except for like maybe, the richest neighborhoods in New York, LA, Washington, D.C., Miami, everybody's suffering. And the United States is supposedly the richest country in the world with the global reserve currency. So the global reserve currency is a disease, it does not benefit the entire population. It benefits the few. I think the Chinese leadership recognizes that, and they're perfectly happy to let the U.S. continue to be diseased rather than to bring that upon themselves.
All right.
Right on, man.
Yeah. So you also have a thesis around different economic collapse scenarios. Is that something that I know we discussed earlier about sort of the quantitative easing and printing sort of the dollar out of existence, but are there other scenarios that could bring about economic collapse faster than we think?
War, pestilence, the same stuff. I guess a question of how you respond to it. I'm not in the, U.S. hyperinflationary scenario kind of thing. The U.S. has food, has water, has people. I don't really think it's going anywhere. But yeah, who knows? The point is not to be able to predict the actual event. The point is to structure a portfolio so that regardless of what the event is, you benefit from the change. And so I think a lot of people have their portfolios. Oh, this is the thing that's going to happen on this date. So I'm going to fucking go long that with a lot of leverage. But then if it doesn't happen as you think, then you go bust. So I'd rather not have to predict the exact trigger, just be long something that I know has done well over time when something has changed, and that's crypto.
Yeah, I know you've suggested obviously Bitcoin, Ethereum. I think you've suggested gold as well. And you talk about risk assets or risk of assets. So what else could you add to such a portfolio other than crypto?
Hopefully
Because,
you own your residence, right? No
yeah,
mortgage. If you're rich enough, have your own food supply, right? It's standard stuff, nothing
right,
crazy. Again, no leverage. If you don't have leverage, if you don't owe people money, then your time horizon is as long as you're alive. And so you're a lot more flexible in terms of how you respond to different events because nobody knows what the future is. I have no idea. I just trade in probabilities.
all right. And back to the election, what do you predict in the short term would happen to global markets and also crypto markets if either Kamala or Trump got in? Would there be a major divergence or?
So I think right now, the Kamala Harris is obviously the favorite candidate of the ruling party and the establishment, Republican and Democrat, right? They don't like Trump.
Yeah.
And they will use whatever means that they can to help her get reelected. And so for us in the financial world, it's okay, well, what can they do to make the stock market go up? Because again, the US voter goes to the voting booth on whatever day in November and they look at their stock portfolio. Oh, it's up. Must have been the Democrats. They did well. Boom, vote Kamala, right? If Trump was in power, oh, S&P is up. Republicans in power, vote Republican. That's all it is. So it behooves Janet Yellen, Jay Powell, the U.S. federal government who's spending money to make sure that the U.S. economy is strong going into early November. And if we start to see wobbles like we've seen in the past few weeks, the response will be printed money. And they're going to go ridiculous with it because they they can't lose. They don't want to lose, because in a very bifurcated, polarized society, the ruling party has probably done some things they shouldn't have done. And if the other party comes in, they're going to punish the people who were in power when they were the underdog. And so it makes sense from a human perspective to do whatever you can and make sure that you don't lose this election. And so that's why I believe that markets are going to go strong into November, hopefully, and that includes crypto as well. What happens between November and January 20th when the next president is sworn in? I don't know. Could there be a civil war? Could there be, very contentious debate about who actually won? I would imagine that's probably going to be the case. There's going to be a lot of global macro chaos if this doesn't go smoothly, and I don't think it's going to go smoothly. So I'm probably going to sit out of the markets between, when the winner is announced and when the actual person takes over, whenever that happens. I don't want to be having big positions, because who knows what's going to happen, and who knows how the rank and file American who have guns are going to respond if their candidate doesn't win.
Interesting.
Yeah. Can I hit him with this is something I know you've been into. What about the kids? What about the babies? I know you got a real interest in educating, and this is a part of this. John reminds us 3 times of wonderful education by good brother Arthur Hayes. And with that being said, what about the babies? What are some of your things you see that are important with educating young folks, and what the future looks like with as it relates to that, and how do we better prepare them?
They need to learn about financial literacy, read books, right? Put down your TikTok, all these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's nice to sit here on a podcast and admonish the young people, put down their mobile phones. That's not going to happen. So instead of trying to preach at them, give them something that's interesting that engages them in the ecosystem. That's why I love meme coins, because people will line outside a Louis Vuitton store for 5 hours to get a cowhide bag with some letters on it, but won't figure out how to use a MetaMask. But if their favorite creator has a meme coin, all of a sudden they're a Solana expert, right? So let's use the culture that people love to get them to learn about these financial tools. And once they learn, oh, this doesn't make any sense. Why does the bank do that? Why can I only go to the bank 9 to 5? Why is the stock market closed at 4:30 or whatever these things? They start asking these questions because they've been exposed to another ecosystem, because it's one of their cultural icons was trading some dog shit meme coin. So I think let's bring more culture on chain. Let's do more of these sort of silly games, because that's how we get people who otherwise would be very apathetic towards learning about financial services into the game.
Yeah, I definitely missed it, because when that crypto kitty stuff came out with Ethereum, I wasn't into Ethereum anyway, so I was like, this stuff's silly. But then next thing you know, well, anyway. So thank you. I think the point you're making about linking the culture and our people instead of talking at them, or generational chauvinism they call it, I definitely respect. All right, Big John.
Yeah, I think this has been a very interesting call with you, fireside chat with you, Arthur. I don't know. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
We might not talk to him for a whole nother year, John. Let's make sure we get. Come on, now, we got plenty. Come on, what you got, John? You got that bag? Come on. Well, I'll talk to him again. Come on now.
Yeah, I've gone through all my notes, and I think I'm pretty much satisfied with what he had to say today. And I like what he said about meme coins, because I haven't been following them too much, but it makes sense that it's more of a cultural phenomenon and some sort of online social movement. So that's very interesting as well. And Sinclair, maybe you have
well, let me get this. Let me get this. The issue of corruption, and I think sometimes some of the things that I see in this industry that we're in, that we care about, as well as others, the issue of corruption. And I think sometimes there are things inside our community that we haven't held people accountable. And then you have, again, the state coming in and forcing their will upon us. It's kind of interesting, because I don't want my mother to be scammed, but at the same time, I don't trust the government, because they're the ones who brought us here. Well, you're in Singapore, but I'm still here, Brother Hayes. So I'm going to get my freedom too, but I'm still here. What do you when you hear the word corruption? And again, I think state actors are the most horrific at corruption in our industry, or the financial systems. What are some of your thoughts on how we should approach the issue of corruption in general, and do you see some ways specifically as it relates to crypto that we should, as being involved, that we should do better in?
I mean, we have this thing called the blockchain. It's a public ledger. Check on chain. If someone's trying to make a claim about this, that, the other thing, and they say, "Oh no, trust me, show me on chain. How does it work? Explain it to me." A lot of things in crypto, if you think about a lot of the companies that went belly up in the last cycle, FTX, Genesis, BlockFi, these companies, they were all built on centralized trust. It wasn't an on-chain thing. If you think about the things that survive, Bitcoin, Ethereum, layer one blockchains, right? These are things that are not built on trust. It's a game, an adversarial game, and they survive. And so if your solution to something is trust this person or trust this process, and there's a reticence to provide transparency, then you shouldn't be involved with that. If you get around to that, I mean, why doesn't the government put all its spending on a blockchain? Don't use Bitcoin. I'm not even saying use Bitcoin. Use a stable coin that you created, and let's track every single payment to every single contractor in the government. Let's see how that goes over. They don't want to do that. So transparency, require it when you're dealing with folks, and you'll see a different outcome in terms of the actions that they purport to do.
I love it. Love it. Right on. Right on. Thank you, Brother Hayes. Yeah, I'm good. Hey, until we tell you talk to you again, Brother Hayes. But we're here, brother. Just let you know. And when you want to come in person to DC, you can come on in and be on a fireside. We'll be right in person. So real quick. So besides this stuff that you do, like and again, I know this is business. Are there some social things? I'm 55 now, and I'm married 8 years. I'm trying to get that balance of what this all means. I'm at 55, so I think I'm past prime. My parents are getting old, so I'm taking care of mom and dad. When you look at your full life, like of course we're talking business, we're talking about this industry that you've dedicated so much, and we're grateful for your dedication. What about the rest of this stuff? Whatever that stuff is, how do you balance that? What advice, as you've been through ups and downs, what, young brothers and sisters who are pursuing their dreams, their passions, that may not necessarily be the status quo. Their parents told them to get a job at a hedge fund or get a job working for IBM. Remember Big Blue, get a job at Big Blue, you'll stay there till you're done. Okay. So what's your thoughts on those?
I mean, everyone has their own goals. Know what your goals are. My goal is I want to have control of my time. I spend 4 months of the year on a ski mountain. So that's what I love to do. I do the crypto stuff and people see me on TV and all that. I don't really do that much of that kind of stuff. I read a lot of books, but I spend most of the year doing activities because I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. So that's my goal. Not necessarily everybody's goal. So I think understand what you're trying to do. If you're working some crazy job and you actually don't care if you eat at the nicest restaurant or have whatever the new fashion is, and why are you doing that? So I think just be honest with yourself about what you actually want and then go do what you need to do to get it.
Right on, man.
Yeah, I actually have one more question.
Oh, see, John, that's inspiration. That was the brothers vibing. Here's the vibrations. Go ahead, John.
It's 3 a.m., so I'm a bit slow right now.
Take your time, brother. Take your time.
So I actually built an AI model on ChatGPT using your articles for a portfolio, which is a question I asked earlier. So what are your thoughts on AI and the intersection with Bitcoin, crypto, and Web3?
So I think AI is great. I think we're going to create a lot of productivity out of it. However, it's going to be very disjointed, right? People are going to lose their jobs. What are they going to do? We're going to have a new conversation about what the social contract is between folks. Who owns the data? Who profits off of this? We don't really know all what's going to happen yet, but we can definitely see a future where we've even concentrated wealth even in fewer hands, and we have a vast majority of people who have nothing and have no chance of ever getting it because the intelligence of the AI that these organizations have is just far beyond what anyone can do anything with. That's one future. There could be other futures as well. So again, I think it's going to be a philosophical discussion globally of like what it means to be human, what it means to have, what's the government supposed to do for us, what is a company, all these sorts of very fundamental questions. There's that. Investing in AI, very difficult because if you think about these models, essentially you're just handing money to NVIDIA and the power company. Those are the best
Right,
investments.
the power company. So, what do you think about the competition between again what we're doing is with miners as versus what is being used for power for AI? Do you see that being a competition, or is that just something that people try to make up stuff with, or the
For
power?
sure. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be a conversation about what power. Where does it come from? Who does it go to? I think nuclear and natural gas are two things that I own a lot of. From an equities perspective, not like the actual stuff, because I believe those are going to be the ways in which data centers are powered. Now, whether or not that goes to an AI company or a crypto company really depends on the price of Bitcoin, right? So if it's very profitable to mine Bitcoin, you're going to mine Bitcoin. If it's very profitable to run an AI data center and train LLMs, you're going to do that. So we have another vector of competition for where this power goes, and that'll reflect itself in the price.
I knew you had it in you, John. I knew you had it in you, John. See that inspiration, bro? I felt that. It was there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, brother Hayes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. In terms of AI and robotics, given that we focus on the Black community and a lot of Black people in the US, for example, have what you call blue collar jobs, if I'm not wrong, Sinclair.
No, blue collar, yeah.
Does that affect them, like the AI with the robotics?
Absolutely. So if you think about a company like General Motors, where both of my parents worked, my mom in like purchasing manager and my dad was on the line. General Motors makes, what is it? I'm getting the statistic wrong, but I'll get the direction correct. They make 5 times as many cars with 25% of the staff that they used to have. So see back in the 70s or the 60s, right? So these large companies, they pay very good benefits, but they don't need as many people because they're shifting to robotics. If you look at China, China has the most number of industrial robots, per capita in the world, because even for them, labor is getting too expensive. There's not enough of it. And so they're mechanizing. And so that's going to happen. And so the challenge is, number one, how do you represent yourself politically to either, tax or whatever on that level, these companies that are essentially earning a higher profit per worker, because a robot is way more efficient than a human. Doesn't get sick, doesn't have benefits, doesn't talk back, just does what it's told, and it doesn't unionize. So it's better. Robots are better for business. But then at the end of the day, the end consumer is a person buying this car. How do you square that? So it's political activism, right? So number one is becoming politically active, so that if you can't escape financially, then you need to use the government as a toolkit, right? Or your collective ability to get people out in the streets, agitate for change. So you can't be apathetic. That job is not going to exist. So either you get off your ass and get politically involved, or you become a very, very good investor.
Yeah.
He ended it with the politics. Look, we had a great conversation with this brother named Jared Ball. He was talking about, again, the use of politics versus just saying I have some money or I have Bitcoin. He was talking about how the policies are impact our lives. And it was just I don't think it was an either or thing. I think, to your point, there's certain levers that we're going to use, and they have certain roles. And I think what you just spelled out was, again, the reason why they have on K Street all these lobbyists is because people power was becoming very influential. And they said, wait a minute, we got to start paying these guys so they'll listen to us and not all them people yelling at them. I think it's a very interesting point that you just made about the activism. So humbly, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think that's all from me.
All right,
awesome. This has been great.
Now, appreciate you, brother Hayes. Keep doing it. And like I said, whatever we can do, be helpful, brother. Definitely want to be supportive. And thank you for supporting us. Thank you for allowing us to be able to say, we got good brother Hayes coming. Y'all going to be watching. They're going to be tuning in. And it's actually next week. So it's September 20th and the 21st at Howard University. And we're so just blessed, like I said, to have you here. Thank you so much, bro. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.